VocalEye Almost Live Zoom. All About Opera, Don Giovanni Preview. Hosted by Christine Malec, with special guest Julia Bonnett.
Welcome to tonight's Almost Live event. My name is Christine Malec, and I am guest hosting this evening as Amy is away. I'm a member of the blind community from Toronto, so I'm, as Amy is fond of saying, 3 hours in the future. And for the second week running, because I was here last week, I also have Vancouver weather. Last week it was raining here. This week it's raining here. Does that mean anything? I don't know, but I just had to note that. I am a musician, an arts consultant. I'm the co-host of the Talk Description to Me podcast, and an occasional guest host, as of starting last week, occasional guest host with VocalEye, which makes me very happy because I love VocalEye. I want to extend a big thank you for the donations and supporters that we have at VocalEye. If you're in a position to make a donation, it's so appreciated. A link will be posted in the chat to do that, but you can also support us in a really meaningful way by writing a testimonial letter. These are super helpful for us to get funding. It's people want to know the impact of what we do. And so when you take the time to write just even a few lines about that, super helpful. We've received some lovely letters. So keep them coming. If you haven't written one, consider it, because it helps in a really big way. And if you happen to be watching this event on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe and visit our website at www.vocaleye.ca. And now I would like to welcome Ingrid Turk into the space to offer our land acknowledgement. Ingrid?
Oh. Am I unmuted now?
Oh, there we are.
Okay, good. I'm so happy to be here with everybody again. My name is Ingrid, as you heard, and I am the daughter and granddaughter of settlers from Scotland and Austria. And I grew up on Vancouver Island in the lands of the Snawawas people. Where I am now in Vancouver on the slopes above False Creek is where the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people have lived and cared for these lands and waters for many thousands of years. They hold ceremony and celebrations here still, and singing and dancing are some of the ways that they celebrate their connection to the land. I acknowledge the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people as artists, musicians, and dancers who are nurturing their spiritual relationship to the land with these art forms. Many of these artists also excel in the colonized arts, including opera, which we're going to hear tonight. And they use it in the same way to celebrate their land and their culture. Because we're talking today about opera, I want to tell you that there are Indigenous opera singers who are blazing trails across Turtle Island in the world, and I encourage you to enjoy their work when you have the opportunity. Toronto Symphony Orchestra has collaborated with Against the Grain Theatre in Toronto and produced a film of Handel's Messiah called Messiah Complex. And artists have translated passages of Handel's Messiah into 6 languages, including Dene and Inuktitut. Jeremy Dutcher from the Tobique First Nation in New Brunswick was awarded the Polaris Prize in 2018. And Jonathan Adams, a Dene Métis singer, is currently the artist in residence at Early Music Vancouver and sings Bach beautifully. So I do encourage you to seek out these artists and listen to their wonderful work.
Thank you, Ingrid. When I was listening to some earlier comments from Julia, who's been a guest before with VocalEye, there was a quote, I wrote it down because I liked it so much, which is that opera is the combination of song and story. And that really resonated with me. And when you were speaking there, Ingrid, about this, I felt very, very poignantly that both of those are things that I'm just going to go out on a limb and call them universal, story and song. And so when we seek to find commonalities between people and groups of people, those are where one of the places I look is song and story. We'd also like to share a short video for Amy that she recorded for us. So Rick, could we watch that and share that, please?
Hello to my VocalEye family friends. This is Amy speaking. I'm really sorry I can't be with you all on this Wednesday evening to learn all about Don Giovanni. I'm quite bummed about that. I will catch up on the YouTube channel though. That's the silver lining. I just want to let you all know that I think you're in fantastic hands with our guest host, Christine Malec, and thank you, Christine, for stepping in my place this evening. The reason I can't join you folks is that my grandmother passed away on early Sunday. I guess that would be Monday morning, early Monday morning. And I took a flight to Calgary Tuesday to be with my family and for the service. So thank you all for giving me that space. And I also want to acknowledge and dedicate tonight's episode to our dear friend John Ray, who passed away earlier in the week as well. John joined us many times from Toronto, Penguin, as some of you may know him as, and he will be greatly missed. So while you all enjoy tonight's VocalEye presentation, I hope you hold in your hearts our dear friend John Ray, and this episode is dedicated to him. And thanks everybody for your kind words and support, and to the VocalEye team for supporting me while I needed to be away. So enjoy the evening and learn all about Don Giovanni.
Oh my goodness, our best and warmest thoughts to Amy and her family. And also, I knew John Ray as well, and I'm sure some of you on this call did. And if you knew John, you will never forget him. A very memorable individualist, outspoken, and a lover of arts and culture. So, totally appropriate for Amy to dedicate this evening to John. And I'm putting my hand over my heart because I feel that too. So thank you, Amy, in your absence for doing that. It's Wednesday, April the 13th, 2022. Tonight, we're proud to offer you our Almost Live event number 80, all about opera Don Giovanni, a descriptive preview of Pacific Opera Victoria's production with our special guest, Julia Bonnett. Welcome, Julia. It's so good to have you in the space. Oh, are you, perhaps you're muted. You're actually more familiar with this space than I am. That's possible. I know you've been a guest and a presenter several times. This is only my second time hosting, and I've been a guest as well.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
there you are.
Yeah, sorry. I
Great.
had muted myself and then was for some reason unable to unmute myself.
The
But
classic.
it has
I do it all the time.
the door has opened.
The door is open.
I'm back.
Yay. All right. So welcome. I'm sure most people on the call are familiar with you, have heard you present before, have chatted with you. For those of us who are meeting you for the first time, can you give us a little sense of who you are and your background in terms of opera and how you come to be presenting on this topic?
Sure, yes. Well, once upon a time, I was an opera singer. Not a rock star opera singer. I was more, I had a career that was sort of local in the Pacific Northwest. So Vancouver, Victoria, Seattle, Tacoma, that kind of area. And sort of settled in Vancouver to get married and have a family, etc. And all along my vision was going. And then it came a point where I needed to make a transition. And that's what I have done. And I sort of went from performing to then teaching. And now, although I am still very much interested in sort of communications and media, I'm not doing it so much as a musician per se, but more as a presenter of things musical and other.
Yeah. Have you ever sung parts of this opera?
yes, in concert, but not as part of the whole production.
Okay, which parts do you
Well,
have
there's a
some?
duet we're going to play tonight
Hmm.
called Ci Darem La Mano, which is a very much a sort of a party piece that people do between Don Giovanni and the sort of the young peasant girl Zerlina. And it's you will probably recognize the tune because you know, even if you've never seen Don Giovanni, you've probably heard the excerpts, whether it was sung or even just played an arrangement with orchestra or piano or something like that. It's often used as kind of background music.
Party piece. We are so coming back to that in the Q&A because I love the phrase, I love the concept, and I've never heard a piece of opera described as a party piece. So we're definitely coming back to that. This opera is new to me. Opera is honestly a closed book. I am a musician, and I I can't say enough about the power that music has in my life. So, and also story and writing. So, when I heard you say that about that's what opera is, I suddenly went, oh, that makes perfect sense. And so I felt warmer toward opera than I ever had when I heard you say that. And so when I was reading up on this one in particular, just as a lover of words and language, I focused in on the words libertine and rake. I love those two words,
Mhm.
very evocative. And so what is it about this opera that draws you in? Is it the music or the story or both or neither or something else?
Well, it's certainly a compelling story, and it's a very old story, which, you know, I'm going to jump into in a minute here, just talking a little bit about the background. But for me, this particular type of opera that is born out of a form that is based in sort of French farce with lots of things like mistaken identity and people wearing masks and people running in and out of rooms and things like that. It's a serious subject and a comic subject at once. There's serious and comic elements to this opera. It's known in the Italian like as an opera buffa, or you know, buffo, like clownish, right? And yet there are very serious elements to it, having to do with freedom, with retribution, with vengeance, with morality, and also, of course, you know, there is a fantastic sort of supernatural element
Mhm.
to this story as well. So it's definitely, it's got something for everything. The style of singing is, you know, classic Mozart with lots of great vocal acrobatics, but also great tunes, and of course, fantastic orchestration, etc. So there's lots to dig into.
Mhm. I was as I was reading, I couldn't help kind of interpreting the story through a feminist lens, and so that's something I'd like to come back to in the Q&A as well. And so, uh, where should we start as we start to understand and dig into the opera? Where are we going to begin?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that this presentation is sort of meant to be a preview of a particular production of Don Giovanni that's being done in Victoria with Pacific Opera Victoria. So this is a brand new production. So what that means essentially is that the sets are new, the costumes are new. It's a big investment by an opera company to actually create a brand new production rather than sort of renting it, bringing it in from some other opera company. So Victoria will now own this production. They will rent it out to other people. So it costs money. It's taken them a couple of years, as you'll hear a little bit later on, a bit more about all of this. But so we will do a little bit towards giving people a sense of what this actual production is like. But we'll talk also just about the opera in general as well. But just so that everybody knows, Pacific Opera, as sort of partner to VocalEye, is offering some cheap tickets, $15 tickets to their preview performance, which is basically their dress rehearsal, on April the 18th. So if you're in the Victoria area, you can give them a call and say, hey, I heard about you from VocalEye and I'd like to come. And that's a pretty good deal, $15. So nice to be back in the theater again, especially when it costs $15. But also, if you can't go on that date, there's a 20% off discount for tickets for their other performance dates on the 20th, 22nd, 24th, and 26th. And this is at the Royal Theatre in Victoria, which is a, sort of a grand old theater in sort of, North American terms. It's nice and small. It's about 1,400 seats, which is sort of a typical European opera house size, which is what Mozart would have encountered, let's say, when he was writing opera, rather than these great big, like Queen Elizabeth Theatre barns of 3,000 people or whatever, which sometimes Mozart's music has a hard time kind of getting through to the last seat in the house in those big theaters. So there'll be more details about the Pacific Opera production in a follow-up email, but just wanted to make sure that everybody sort of knew that that's what we're doing here tonight, is introducing it to our community, but also trying to give a few details about the actual performance. So I guess I'll just dive in here at the beginning with a little bit of background of what Don Giovanni is, which is, Don Giovanni is Italian for Don Juan. So this is the story of the character Don Juan, which originally takes place in Spain, and in Mozart's opera it does too, but because the opera is sung in Italian, we are using, Mozart used the Italian version of the name Don Giovanni. So, we think of Don Juan as being, a real smooth guy, sort of great with the women, but it is an old Spanish folk legend. And the action, and I'm just going to give a really quick version of the plot, and then we're going to listen to a little interview, and then we'll come back and deal with the plot in a little bit more detail in a minute. But just the broad strokes here. The action revolves around a Spanish nobleman, Don Juan, or Don Giovanni, in Seville, and his servant, Leperello, who's sort of this long-suffering guy who fixer a little bit. He sort of cleans up after Don Giovanni and makes things possible. So Don Giovanni is a true libertine. He acts for his own pleasure without regard for who he hurts or inconveniences. And he seems to be a bit addicted to love. He racks up conquest after conquest. And this story tells of his dealings with Leperello and his final 3 conquests, who are Donna Anna. So Donna and Don, these words, we don't really have them in English in the same way. They are sort of honorary terms. It's like saying, Mr. John or, Sir John or something like that. They denote nobility. So Don Giovanni is a nobleman and Donna Anna is a noble woman. She is the daughter of the Commendatore, which is basically means the commander. So it's sort of like a general, a very famous general in Seville. She's also betrothed or fiancée to Don Ottavio. And that is, they're just about to be married, but they're not fully there yet. And so that's one of his last 3. The other one is Donna Elvira. And she's also a noble woman, but she's sort of dishonored a little bit because of the affair that she's already had with Don Giovanni. And she's sort of throughout the opera pursuing him to try to get him to marry her and settle down and all that. So she wants to snag him and she pursues him all over the place throughout the show. And then the last of the 3 is Zerlina, who is a beautiful young peasant girl. She's about to be married to her beau Mazzetto, who's another peasant. And Zerlina is kind of starstruck for Don Giovanni, but she is sort of saved from throwing herself away entirely by Donna Elvira. So in essence, these 3 women and their assorted fiancés or whatever are pursuing Don Giovanni throughout the whole story. And he's just kind of escaping from one sticky situation after another, totally causing problems all over the place. Don Giovanni is just not a very nice guy until it finally catches up with him in the form of an otherworldly dinner guest. And he is dragged at the end of the opera, dragged down to hell. So lots to get through in this, but before we go, I wanted to introduce an interview that I did with the the team behind the scenes at Pacific Opera to talk about their production of Don Giovanni. And Rick, will you go ahead and play that video now? All right. Welcome to Maria Lamont, director, and Christina Poddubiuk, designer for Pacific Opera Victoria's production of Don Giovanni. And Christina and Maria have kindly agreed to do this little interview to give us some inside information about their production coming up. So I'm just going to dive right in, and we're in intense times right now with all kinds of things going on globally, and of course just coming out of the pandemic. And I'm just wondering, just right off the top, how does it feel to be back in production with live audiences? Could you start, Maria?
Sure. Well, it's very exciting. I've done work in Victoria before. I've been very fortunate in that I'm based overseas now in Belgium. And I think because the opera business, I suppose for lack of a better word, is structured a little bit differently overseas, I think companies there have been trying consistently for the last 2 years to produce under some sort of circumstances, whether it's been so I've actually had quite a busy 2 years, whether it's been tapings or reduced productions or just filmed productions or just trying to go back live earlier than in Canada. We've been very lucky in that way. So I have been working pretty consistently through the pandemic on different things. For example, in the fall in Italy, they were back in full production with full houses, with some restrictions in place with testing and some masks. But it's great to be back in Canada, and I can certainly feel from the singers and all the artists and all the people involved in Pacific Opera that there's enormous sense of anticipation, fear, and joy to be working together again.
Yeah, it's nice to be innovative when you have to be, innovative and doing all this fancy stuff. But it is kind of nice also to be back together again in front of a big audience too, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Christina? Have you been busy in these last couple of years, innovating in different ways?
Not really. I mean, for me, I work in theater and opera, and as for most Canadian designers, there aren't a lot of opera opportunities. But theater and any kind of performing work was just not happening for 2 years. So I was able to. I mean, luckily, I'm fairly well on in my career. It didn't affect me terribly.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to keep some of our jobs going and certainly didn't have the difficulties that younger designers were facing, because really many people had to really take other jobs. I've heard of all kinds of people having to switch to different careers or just take whatever they could find to keep
exactly
going.
Yeah it's been tough for lots of people, but hopefully we're just at the beginning of a new kind of resurgence of excitement about live performance. So fantastic. Well, just turning to Don Giovanni, so I'm curious, maybe we'll start with you, Christina. First of all, have you done Don Giovanni before? And secondly, what do you think is sort of the enduring appeal of this story of Don Juan and the opera of Mozart?
Oh, that's a hard question. No, I haven't done Don Giovanni before. I doubt there have been any productions in Canada that have originated. I don't know if there's been a Don Giovanni in Canada that's originated from a Canadian company, in fact.
Yeah, I think Edmonton has done it. I think
that's true.
I think Edmonton has done a production rather recently. And I mean, certainly the COC has, but maybe a co-production or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty ambitious work. We're certainly finding in many ways it's a very challenging piece. Certainly, I think Maria and I have joked many times that it's fortunate we had the 2 years to sort of work on it, because
it's a brand new production then.
Complex project.
Sorry, it is a brand new production then. That was also okay. Well, that's very exciting. Yeah.
Yes, and it was postponed. So the request from Timothy was 2 years ago, just before the pandemic. And we started work on it, and I knew that, oh my gosh, I didn't know the work myself very well. I mean, I'd seen it millions of times, but with any Mozart work, you really have to spend a lot of time studying it. And so a year is not really a lot, but because of the pandemic, we postponed. And as Christina was saying, thank God, because it gave us time to meet in person for one, because we did all the preliminary via Zoom. All of our meetings were Zoom, so we had a chance to meet in the second summer, and just let the material develop, because it's very it is very complex.
Right, and we'll get into this more, but complex in with lots of layers of things to chew on, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get into that more a little bit later, but I'm just curious because, of course, I have seen some photos, and I can't see all that well, but I could see a little bit, and it's obviously an updated production. But maybe could you spend a little bit of time talking about your design and the production, and what do they look like? Could you describe a little bit the character, the flavor of the sets and the costumes, etc.?
Sure. I think in many ways this set developed fairly quickly and easily, in a way, I guess, because the theater itself presents problems and limitations that we needed a really flexible space, and it's kind of what, I mean, in some ways I'm used to, because I've done quite a bit of Shakespeare, and I just, for better or for worse, that tends to be the way I approach things, is to find a way to create a space that we can add or subtract from, or light in different ways, or neutral. I mean, enough to be interesting, but neutral enough to achieve our goals without, it just wouldn't be practical or possible to do a really elaborate set with as many changes as we would like. So my set really it's a very black, glossy set. We decided extremely early on that it was going to be contemporary. So while I was interested in period architecture, which is what it looks like, it's a series of Romanesque arches, really, it's pretty basic, but we gave it the gloss that could make it a nightclub, like a contemporary nightclub if we wanted to. And that's really basically what for my role is, to try and interpret the material and to create situations and clothes and props and settings that don't go against the spirit of the opera, but that we can easily understand in a more contemporary context.
Right, because really it is just one great big sort of party in Don Giovanni's mind.
It is.
From beginning to end, isn't it? Yeah, it's just like, and he can't stop, he just, if that champagne aria, it just, your head is really spinning with it as it goes. Yeah. Maria, did you have any thoughts about, because it seemed to me that the costumes were a particular period, and Christina, Maria, whoever jump in on this, is there a particular period, or is it just kind of contemporary?
Yeah, it is contemporary. I mean, there was many reasons why. I mean, one reason was that I felt that the world has been through so much social change in the last few years. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to look at this very classical story with the perspective of what we know now about, about addiction, about trauma, about sexuality, and all of those things. And I thought it was a really great opportunity to relook at that. And also, I think I looked at the cast, and we had, a very inclusive, a very diverse cast.
Mhm.
And I thought it would be great to see that reflected in a contemporary way and embraced in a contemporary way in the production. So, oh, my light's just gone off here. Sorry, I'm just gonna, I have this emotion detect. There it is, it's back. I have to change.
Lights, camera.
So yeah, so I just thought, let's try to, there was also practical reasons why it felt right to me, but I think we were on the same page. And the only thing is that, I don't know if I watched too many, contemporary thriller series when I was during COVID, but I do feel that this production, it has this classical references that Christina has done so beautifully, but there's also, I feel, I was interested, there's so much high drama, very contemporary drama, that there is a bit of a filmic inspiration too. So that's what we're hoping for, is that sort of movie like high drama and realism as well.
It's not a noir thing though, like a film noir.
I would say there's sort of moments of inspiration that way, especially in the very beginning when Anna, there's this drama when the Commendatore gets killed and Anna's being assaulted, for lack of a better word, by Giovanni. I mean, you can interpret that different ways, but my interpretation is that there is it's a non-consensual moment between the two of them, and she's very upset and very emotional and very angry, and it results in the death of her father. So it does have that sort of, I feel that there has some thriller atmosphere, and that's what that's how the piece starts, and it's supported in the music, I think.
Totally agree. Yeah. So you did mention about the inclusive nature of your cast, and we do know that you have a transgender Don Giovanni, and I'm just wondering if that has sort of played into, I mean, I think you sort of referenced it already, but is there anything more you'd like to tell us about that?
Well, for sure, we talked about it a lot, Christina and I. It was presented to me, as a fait accompli, as a cast, and I think it was an very brave and sort of interesting challenge. I think important. No, it is a very politically sort of hot topic right now. So I had some I approached Lucia, had some long conversations about those topics regarding to her, and I think the conclusion that we came to is that to ask questions, but not to really have to answer anything. I mean, we do refer to the character as a he. It's a male character. She herself is very open. She plays male characters all the time. I mean, that's her voice type, so she has to play male characters. At the same time, it was an interesting opportunity to think about the feminine side of the character, that often is, he's such an alpha male. So, but understands women incredibly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to give them all these different women what they want in the act of seducing them. So, I think that is the feminine side of Don Giovanni. I mean, just to think about it or to ask the question. And I think that she has played all the male baritone roles in the show. Like, she's done Don Giovanni many, many times. As she's played Mazzetto, she's played Leperello, and she's played Don Giovanni. So she understands, the piece incredibly well. And I think another step of inspiration is like, we talked, Christina and I, about in some of the other characters, in some of the, not so much the soloists, but in the society, that it's a society where there is some gender fluidity, where there is some, so that was a world that, we felt comfortable including, and also the costume concept, the parties and stuff, not necessarily for the other soloists, because for me, their relationships are very, Mozart has written them in a very clear way. But for sure, it was very inspiring. At the same time, I'm not transgendered, so I didn't feel comfortable making any big political statements about that. It's not I think that it would be different if, a director had gone through that experience and wanted to, you know, had something to say about it, but I'm a cis-oriented woman. So I think from my perspective, I'm really interested in, the dynamic of male-female for sure, and how Giovanni sees women. That to me is very interesting.
And Christina, when you were doing the costumes, you know, did it influence you at all? Like this same kind of dynamic?
Well, I mean, I think Maria said it so well. I think what I'm really happy with in this production is that there's no attempt to sort of exploit or to make any easy choices or any like obvious choices. So I think I've really tried to stay away from anything. I don't know how to say it, but to stay away from cliches and and cheap, easy solutions. I mean, I think that sense of experimentation and libertarianism is there, but hopefully without any like cheap ideas.
Right. And so
you know what I mean?
Staying open to,
yeah.
I think that's very interesting. Well, I mean, it's such an interesting character, lots of interesting characters in this Mozart opera. Don Giovanni is, of course, complex because he is at best a liar and manipulator, and at worst a rapist and a murderer. So definitely an anti-hero. So why is this character so appealing for audiences, do you think, like historically?
Well, I think a number of things. First of all, you know, everyone has fantasies about seduction or being seduced. So I think that, you know, he plays into our sexual fantasies because he's so completely free, and he pursues his sexuality in such a bold and sort of unapologetic way. And he pushes all sorts of boundaries about sexuality. He has also, I think, a very powerful life, you know, eros force, and so, you know, he sees it as a purely positive thing. It's not moralizing, you know, in any way, which is what people in the 18th century, you know, there was a morality about sexuality, although at that time in history people were fighting that a little bit. There was a lot of promiscuity, and but often there was a conflict about, you know, punishment as well. So I think and you see that in this production, and I think that's why, you know, there's been times where the epilogue, which is in a major key, is sometimes dropped. You know, in the 19th century they would drop them, or even recently they would drop the epilogue. And I think what's interesting about the character is not his sexual proclivities and habits too, but that he's transgressive and always also, you know, against religion politically. And so that also fascinated people, that he would, you know, in the original Molière play, it was censored very viciously after the first production, and the script was destroyed, and only one copy survived. And what offended people was the fact that not his sexual habits, but that Giovanni gave a peasant a gold piece and told him to curse God. So it was a religious, the religious transgression was also what, you know, freaked people out. And I think, and I think we're just the unapologetic way he lived his life and dared. And don't forget that in this opera by Mozart, we see him at the last 2 days of his life. So for me, it's in terms of creating a background leading up to that, I think that perhaps in his life and the way he's conducted his life, we're seeing a moment in time where things have accelerated, and perhaps it's not like a day in the life. It really starts at the peak, and it's not, whether it takes place over 2 nights or 1 long night, it's sort of time, we lose a sense of time in the piece. But definitely, you know, it's a moment of confrontation. And for me, I think what Giovanni at the end of is to be reproached for anything. I think it's, you know, not seeing his conquests as individuals. So I think on that sense, that's what he's being now. So that also goes with the Commendatore, is not being confronted by people demanding, you know, see me as a person, not just a notch in the big post.
Not as a thing. Yeah.
Not as a thing. That's what resonates for me. But
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that. It's not a day in the life thing, because it really does feel like it's an addiction that's gone out of control.
Yeah.
And it's just piling up. And I find it quite interesting that at the end he talks a lot about, I am not afraid. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? As he's like being invited down to hell, and it's like, whatever happens, I'm not going to be afraid, right? So I think that appeal to freedom and not allowing your morality or your guilt to take over, like it's just such a rebellion against that. And this is just, my last question about this is that freedom. There's been a lot of people talking about freedom lately, right? And I'm wondering, do you think that we have a different relationship with freedom now than they did then?
Well, it's the hot topic, isn't it, today?
Mhm.
And where does it lie? And where are your loyalties? Are your loyalties to yourself, or your loyalties to your family or to your community? And what is worth fighting for? And well, I don't know if I want to get too political about it, but I think, we had a big freedom crisis in Canada this winter, and then literally the next week there was an invasion in Ukraine. And I think, talk about perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really
Real.
but it's really, really real. And it means like all those people in the Ukraine who are literally dying every day for a principle and for their families, for their friends. That's pretty confronting when you talk about, not that I'm saying to minimize the other freedoms that we have to fight for, in a time where technology and the better good, these topics are so controversial, especially in the pandemic. But anyway, it just makes you think about all those things, honestly. And
yeah, absolutely. And well, with that, I will wrap up for today. And I just want to thank you both, Christina Poddubiuk and Maria Lamont, and wish you all the best in your upcoming presentation of Don Giovanni. Thank you so much from us at VocalEye.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure. And I hope you enjoy the music and whatever you can enjoy of the visuals of the piece.
Absolutely. Well, that's the great thing about Mozart's music, hey, is that it tells a story in and of itself. So thanks so very much.
Thank you.
My gosh, that is dense. There are so many points where I want to just dive in and ask a lot of questions or raise some ideas, but I'm kind of focused on one, which is that there's two kinds of tension that I'm focusing on. One is the tension in the character of Don Giovanni between the freedom loving expressing, being free of mores and religion and politics, but at the same time being basically asocial, so that there's no sense of his consequences for his actions. The other tension for me is that these are really serious topics, but you've contextualized this opera as part spoof, or not spoof, part light-hearted, that there's a light-heartedness to it too. And I guess so far I've had trouble connecting with the light-hearted element, because these don't seem like laughing topics for me. How does that get reconciled in the piece, or it doesn't?
Well, it does, and it is again a kind of a historical, like just kind of going through the history of the piece might help to contextualize that. So shall I kind of dive into that? And then,
please, yes.
Yeah, okay. So this character of Don Juan is, as I said, sort of a hero villain of Spanish folk legend. And the first version was produced around 1630 by Tirso de Molina, called, the English translation of his play was called The Prankster of Seville and the Stone Guest. So there's kind of an interesting choice of words, right? The Prankster of Seville. So going from there, like this is the golden age of Spanish theater we're talking about, right? This sort of 17th century and a little bit earlier. And, you know, the plays in those days had been full of mustache twirling villains, you know, and they lots of ladies fainting and, you know, and getting rescued and things like that. So what Mozart did, and again, this character Don Juan was also treated by Molière, as Maria mentioned, as a play, and even Byron, Lord Byron, wrote a poem which was called, he pronounced Don Juan, which is just wrong, but anyway, and so it was a, you know, it was a serious topic, but for the most part, before Mozart, he kind of got his comeuppance, because the character does kind of take it a little bit too far by insulting the dead, right? By after killing the Commendatore, you know, he goes a little bit too far. He's a jokester, he's a prankster, but when he sort of insults the Commendatore after having killed him, that's when the supernatural element is involved. And so after, you know, but before Mozart, it had been kind of growing throughout Europe. So the original play is 1630, Mozart wrote his opera 1787. Throughout that time, Commedia dell'arte, the puppet shows took it all over Europe. And then again, it was a popular subject in the regular theater and in opera. And in fact, in Prague, where the opera was commissioned, there had been another opera on the very same subject produced even a few months before. So it was just kind of a thing that people like to see that story over and over again. But certainly Mozart opens up the characters a little bit. And I think the comedy is part of that, like the smart alecky remarks, and it really does become sort of an anti-hero, right? So the kind of hero that part of us admires and laughs at the jokes, and you know, that he gets away with being such a little putz, but then part of us really, you know, is rooting for him to get his just desserts. So it was, you know, there are a couple of other things that I'd like to point out about Mozart's version of this opera. The main characters, Don Giovanni, Leperello, the Commendatore, they're all bass baritones. So, which is kind of unusual for heroes, really, in opera. Oftentimes the heroes tend to be tenors, which are the sort of higher, lighter male voices, right? So you know, oftentimes low voices in opera have been reserved for persons of low character or low birth. And that holds true here in this opera for most part. The Don Ottavio, the fiance of Donna Anna, is the only tenor, and he kind of comes off as a bit of a wimp in the opera. So the women are all sopranos, all higher voice. So maybe to some extent, if we have that same comparison about high voices versus low voices, high voices being of high moral character, low voices, then the women are held up as being a little bit higher in terms of their status and their sort of moral place, let's say. The other thing I wanted to point out about the opera as we're going through it and we're listening to some excerpts is that there is this mode of pushing the action forward and putting you know, a lot of dialogue out there. It's sung, but it's sung as recitative or recitativo in Italian, which basically means to recite. So it is sung, but because most of the time it's like one word per note, not too high or low, it makes it very easy to be understood. And this is a sort of a device that's used in opera a lot at this period. And the only accompaniment is the harpsichord, which is that sort of precursor to the piano. So it makes it so that the dialogue is very clear, which is actually one of the sort of, problems for a lot of people dealing with opera in these days, is that they can't understand what's going on. And of course here it's because it's not in English, it's in Italian. But also it's because sometimes, it's hard to understand the sung dialogue. But with Recit, it's quite clear. And it also allows the singers a lot of freedom. So whereas in an aria, they're restricted by the tempo and the written out notes in terms of their duration, how long they are, that's very, very much prescribed. But in Recit, they can play around a little bit because the harpsichordist can just follow them wherever they go, with rehearsal, of course. So listen for that as we're going through. And if it's okay, I'm just going to dive right. Oh, sorry. I wanted to make one more little note just about this particular production. And you did hear Christina talking about the dark stone arches, which, can be made to look like a nightclub, or it can be made to look like a mansion. So it's very neutral, as she said, but very evocative still of dark, dark and sort of sexuality and earthiness and things like that. The costumes are also updated, but not to one specific era, as Maria was saying. So it just sort of reflects the changing attitudes you would find in different eras and associates those with different characters who would also have different attitudes towards sexuality, gender, power, some like both for the men and the women. Some characters and people in the chorus are wearing sort of trampy or tarty things. There's men wearing tight leather breeches, like the dancers you'd see in clubs, or else sort of frilly pirate shirts, that sort of the Pirates of the Caribbean guy, Johnny Depp, you'd see that he sort of encompasses that feminine side of the masculine, right? Which women find very attractive, and men too. The women vary from sort of tight pencil skirts and very structured to negligees, or again, more sort of tarty outfits that look like a French maid. So it's playing with a lot of stuff. And I hope that this production has lots of traction and gets played. I think it will, because it's from what I saw of the sketches and things like that, it's a nice looking set and costumes. Okay, let's talk about the story. So again, it takes place in Seville. The action starts at the palace of the Commendatore, which is just sort of like a local figure, big figure of commander. Don Giovanni is there. He's masked, and he's trying to seduce Donna Anna by fooling her into thinking he is her fiance, Don Ottavio. So this is already kind of an underhanded thing to do. But she figures it out and she screams. But then she won't let him go. She won't let him run away until he's kind of caught. So her father arrives to save her, and she runs off to get him to call for help. Her father engages Don Giovanni in a duel with swords, but is unfortunately killed. And Don Giovanni, along with the long-suffering servant Leperello, they flee the scene. Donna Anna returns with her fiancé to find her father dead, and they swear vengeance on the masked intruder. So some time passes now, and in the next scene, we're in a tavern with Don Giovanni and Leperello, and he again starts making the moves, as he always does, on another woman, this time Donna Elvira, only to discover that he's forgotten he's already seduced her. She's one of his past conquests, and she's actually been looking for him because she wants him to resume their affair. Don Giovanni is, he's tired of her. He's already had her. So he leaves, and he instructs his servant to let her down, not so gently, with the following Catalogue aria. And I'm just going to read a little bit of the text of it so you get a sense. So Leperello is talking to her, and he goes, "Hey, cheer up. You're not You're not, and you won't be the last, the first or the last one that Don Giovanni has had. And then he holds up a book and he says, look at this book. It's not very small, is it? But it's completely full of the names of the women that Don Giovanni has had. Every village, every city, every town can testify to his love affairs. And he says, this is the catalog of the beautiful women that has been loved by my master. And I drafted it myself. And let's read it together. And he says, now, in Italy, he had 640 women. In Germany, 231, 100 in France, 91 in Turkey. But in Spain, they're already up to 1,003. And in the, there's more along here. He talks about how Don Giovanni loves peasants, maids, city dwellers, countesses, baronesses, every age, shape, every level of society. His custom is to praise the blonde for her kindness, the brunette for her loyalty, the white-haired woman for her sweetness. So he's not biased at all in his taste. He wants a tubby woman in winter, a slim woman in summer. And he says, tall women are majestic, but small women always charming. So he goes on like this, talking about, you know, that Don Giovanni really doesn't care. He just likes women and he just wants to kind of get as many as he can. But the line to listen for is, but in Spain, 1,003, which repeats quite a lot of time, and you'll hear it as, ma in España, 1,003. So Rick, when you're ready, if you will play for us Leperello's Catalogue aria.
Madamina, il catalogo è questo, delle belle chiamò il padron mio, un catalogo gli che ho fatto io. Osservate, leggete con me, osservate, leggete con me. In Italia 640, in Lamagna 231, 100 in Francia e Turchia 91, ma in Spagna son già 1.300. 1.300. E van tra queste contadine, cameriere cittadine, van contesse baronesse, marchesane, principesse, van d'ogni grado, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni età. In Italia 640, in Lavagna 231, 100 in Francia, in Turchia 91, ma in Spagna son già 1.300. 1.300. Ma tra queste contadine, cameriere cittadine, ma contesse, baronesse, marchesane, principesse, mi van d'ogni grado, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età. Bella bionda, bella l'usanza di lodar la gentilezza nella bruna, la costanza nella bianca, la dolcezza. Vuol d'inverno la grassotta, vuol d'estate la magrotta, e la grande maestosa, e la grande maestosa. piccina, la 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 piccina, e ogni or vezzosa, e ogni or vezzosa, e ogni or vezzosa, delle vecchie a conquista e piacer di porle in lista la passion predominante e la giovin principiante non si dica se sia ricca, se sia brutta, se sia bella, se sia ricca, brutta, se sia bella. Purché porti la gonnella, voi sapete quel che fa, voi sapete quel che fa, purché porti la gonnella, voi sapete quel che fa, voi sapete quel che
So, what do you think? Oh. I cannot hear Christine. Is it just me?
Oh, are you hearing me now?
Now I'm hearing you.
Ah, sorry. Thank you sorry about that.
Mm.
I had a couple of stage related questions there because it sounded to me like the singer was moving around the stage, and I wondered about he's clearly gloating on behalf of his master. And what's Donna Elvira doing? Is she just standing there looking humiliated? Like, how does an opera stage production handle the placement and movement of characters that you're supposed to be looking at versus the ones that you're not?
Well, I mean, I think if they're on stage, then you're likely to be, looking at them, but for sure she is reacting in this situation. So, he produces this book, and the gag that often accompanies this is that not only is it this big, thick book, but it also like unfurls. There's this like long list that just kind of comes folding out of this book.
Right.
And whereas at first she's just kind of, this you can't possibly be serious. And then she starts seeing it and she starts going, oh my goodness, this is the guy that I've actually hooked up with, and no wonder I've come down in society so much. I've been made a fool of. And then she starts to, clearly it settles in, and you can see her kind of go through the sadness and then hit to the rage part really quite quickly.
Okay. So she's featured as well. Like her reactions are important.
Yes, she's just standing there, and he's kind of again listing all of the women and acting out, perhaps if they're small or they're big or they're haughty or they're of low birth or they're older or whatever. So it's a bit of a showpiece there. Yeah.
So where should we go from here?
Okay, well, so after this aria, nearby, we see Don Giovanni again, and he's moved on to his next opportunity for seduction, which comes in the form of a wedding party with the young peasants Mazzetto and Zerlina, the young peasant girl. And he decides he wants Zerlina because she's pretty and young. And he gets Leperello again to do his dirty work by distracting the groom. And Don Giovanni makes the moves on Zerlina. So that then follows one of the only real sort of love duets. There's really a real love duet in the show. It's not a love story really. And I'll just read you a little bit of the text and then we'll play it for you. So this is Ci Darem La Mano, and he says, you know, basically, I'm going to give you my hand. He's trying to convince her that he's actually going to marry her. And there you'll say yes. See, it's not far, my love. Let's leave from here. Let's go somewhere we can be alone, you know? And Zerlina is saying to herself, oh, should I? Shouldn't I? Oh, my heart is trembling at the thought. And it's true. I would like, she's starstruck. There's a total Cinderella thing happening here. And I can have a little bit of fun, and you know, and then Don Giovanni is saying, oh, come on, my beautiful, and but then Zerlina says, oh, but poor Mozart, that wouldn't be nice for him. And then he totally seduces her with, I'm going to change your life. I'm going to, you know, you're so beautiful. I'm going to raise you up, you know, in society. And then she says, okay, I can't resist. Let's go. And then basically, you know, they sing together. Come, my darling, let's restore our pleasure in innocent love. So he's convinced her that this is an innocent thing she's doing by betraying her fiance. So Rick, if you're ready, will you please play for us Ci Darem La Mano?
Io so che raro quante donne voi altri cavalieri siete onesti e sinceri.
È un'impostura della gente plebea, la nobiltà è dipinta negli occhi l'onestà. Orsù non perdiam tempo, in questo istante io ti voglio sposare.
Voi?
Certo io. Quel casinetto è mio, soli saremo, e la gioiello mio, ci sposeremo. Ci darem la mano, la mi dirai di sì.
Ma
le pene a ristorar, donne in lo ciel de amor.
What a happy couple. How joyful. And yes, that was sardonic.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, there's something a little bit spider-ish about, spider in a web about Don Giovanni, because Zerlina really doesn't have a chance. I mean, her station, and he is, he's physically attractive. He's well dressed, he's well groomed, and he pursues her around the stage. She tries to get away, then he finally grabs her, won't let her move, and then it basically, in this particular production anyway, and this it's fairly typical, he moves in physically closer till he's actually like nibbling on her neck and all the rest of it. And so she's she really doesn't have a chance. And so at the end, she's given up, and she's ready to go off and throw her life away. But before she does, she's saved by Donna Elvira, who comes back on the scene, saving her Zerlina from herself. And further to that, Donna Anna, the one that he was attempting to rape at the beginning, and her fiancé Ottavio also arrive. Now, Donna Anna and Ottavio don't yet know that he was the masked intruder, and actually start to ask Don Giovanni for his help in avenging her. But Elvira quickly fills them in on his true nature, and Anna recognizes him by his voice as the villain that attacked her. So he, again, sort of escapes somehow with the help of Leperello, and manages to sort of flee the scene. And next, though, we see that Mazzetto and Zerlina have actually agreed to relocate their wedding party to Don Giovanni's castle. But Mazzetto is sort of suspicious about what's going on with Zerlina, despite having been distracted by Leperello. He's questioning Zerlina's fidelity. But nevertheless, they have moved the wedding party to his castle, because after all, it's free food, a nice place to have your wedding party. And again, Don Giovanni continues his campaign to get Zerlina alone. So Leperello is doing his best to keep Mazzetto distracted, even taking the blame when Don Giovanni makes another failed pass at Zerlina, and she screams, and everybody comes running, and he says, "Oh, it wasn't me, it was him," But nobody's buying at this time, and Don Ottavio challenges Don Giovanni to a duel, but again, Don Giovanni and Leperello narrowly escape. So that's the end of the first act. And we head into the second act with Don Giovanni returning that evening to Donna Elvira's house, this time to try to seduce her housemaid. So he does this, and this is where the whole farcical stuff comes in, with the mistaken identities and people changing costumes and pretending to be other people, because this is what he does. He switches clothes with his servant Leperello and forces Leperello, acting as Don Giovanni, to sing a serenade to Donna Elvira from under her balcony. And then she comes out, and she doesn't know that that's Don Giovanni. She thinks, she doesn't know that it's Leperello. She thinks it's Don Giovanni, and she allows herself to be led away. She comes out to greet him, and they go for a walk. She thinks she's going with Don Giovanni, but again, it's Leperello in disguise. So you have to suspend a little bit of your disbelief here to make this work. But in any case, after they're gone, Don Giovanni, again masquerading as Leperello, begins to serenade the housemaid. But he doesn't get very far before Don Ottavio and his buddies come back looking for Don Giovanni. But again, because Don Giovanni is actually dressed as Leperello, they don't realize it's him. So they think they're talking to Leperello, and they believe him when Leperello says, "Oh yeah, no, I don't like Don Giovanni either. let's go get him. So he sends Don Ottavio's friends away on a wild goose chase, but Don Ottavio is left there with actually Don Giovanni in disguise, who then proceeds to beat up poor Ottavio with his own weapons. And then he leaves laughing at Don Ottavio. Donna Anna returns and consoles Ottavio at this point, who has had injury added to insult. So now we change back to Leperello, again, disguised as Don Giovanni. He has led Donna Elvira away to a darkened courtyard, but they are shortly joined by Donna Anna and Ottavio, as well as Mazzetto and Zerlina. They're all on the hunt for justice. Finally, when it looks like he might actually be murdered by this gang, because after all, he's dressed as Don Giovanni, Leperello removes his disguise and begs for forgiveness, and then very quickly runs away. So it's a lot of running away here. In the next scene, Leperello finds Don Giovanni in the graveyard where there's a statue of the Commendatore, which has very quickly been put up, it seems, and where he's been buried, and this statue has been erected of him. So this statue is center stage, and Leperello, understandably upset by almost being killed because of his master's indiscretions, he tells Don Giovanni off. But Don Giovanni feels no guilt. He actually rubs the salt in the wound by saying that while he was in disguise, he actually seduced one of Leperello's old girlfriends. And he just laughs and laughs at Leperello's outrage. So at this moment, we have the supernatural element, because this is when the statue of the Commendatore actually comes to life and speaks to both the men, and they of course just freeze, right? The statue warns Don Giovanni that he won't be laughing much longer, not past sunrise. So Don Giovanni, of course, shakes it off, and he recovers himself and flippantly invites the statue to dine with him that night. To his surprise, the statue nods his head and accepts. So we then change scenes to Don Giovanni's elegant dining room, where he sings the Champagne Aria, which is a very, very short aria. And in the interview, Maria makes reference to it as this kind of, there's a quality of addiction out of control to this aria, because it's so fast. And it's basically just like, come on, let's have a party. Let's have a party. Come on, go get some drinks and go get some girls and let's do, we're going to play it for you in a minute, but I'll just read you a little bit of the text. It says, until they have become hot-headed with wine, let's prepare a grand party. If you find a girl in that piazza, try to bring her here. May the dance be wild, and one will dance a minuet, another dance. Who will dance the allemande with you? Meanwhile, I'll be singing my own song, flirting with this girl and that girl. You must add to my list about 10 entries tomorrow morning. So he's planning on being quite busy that night. So Rick, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and play the Champagne Aria now of Don Giovanni.
Bravo, bravo, arci bravo, l'affar non può andar meglio. Incominciasti, io saprò terminar, troppo mi premono queste conda di notte, le voglio divertir finché vien notte. Figlia la vino, calda la tesa, una che festa fa preparare, se trovi piazza qualche ragazza, tega che quella cerca minar, tega che quella cerca minar, cerca minar, cerca minar, senza colordine la fantasia, il minuetto, la follia, il alemana, arriverà, il minuetto. minuetto fare barar chi la follia fare barar chi la rimanna fare barar ed è tanto da toccando con questa quella può amareggiar allora lista domma mattina d'una decina deve mentare allora lista d'una decina deve mentare se trovi in piazza qualche ragazza tegari quella cercami no la lista domma mattina d'una decina deve mentare senza il colore della strategia il minuetto che la valia il rimana la lista domma mattina d'una decina deve mentare d'una decina deve mentare d'una decina deve mentare devi mentare
Wow, that's a the music really captures that that vibrant and frenetic spirit.
Yeah, totally breathless and panting, you know, like just panting with the
Yes.
desire to party. Yeah.
And I know you said, oh, you'll probably recognize it. And I was thinking, no, I probably won't because I know zero about opera. But that was very familiar, that melody in there. But I can't place why. I think maybe a lot of other melodies must have borrowed from it because it sounded very familiar.
The duet, you mean we played before? That's the one that I was referencing when I was saying you'll recognize it. But this one you might too, just because it's, well,
it's such a familiar melody line to it, but I can't place why. Yeah. Interesting.
No, it, you know, again, a lot of these things get used in commercials and things like that.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
If there's somebody that's racing to catch the bus or something like that, you might have something like this going because again,
that's probably
like the poor guy barely has time to breathe, right? In this aria, it's a very difficult aria to sing, and you know, I chose the excerpt that I did because it's actually from a video as opposed to a live performance where, you know, things can be a little bit ragged, you know what I mean? Whereas with this, it would have been a recording they did in a studio and they, you know, it's nice and clean, you know.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah. So what happens at dinner?
Okay, so we're at dinner. Don Giovanni has, you know, had an extravagant feast laid out in his dining room. And he and Leperello are there. And then, well, Elvira's back again. So Donna Elvira is not giving up. She arrives to tell him that she's no longer angry with him. She just pities him. And she's begging him to change his ways. But of course, he's just amused by this and tells her, you know, he sees no reason to change. Wine and women are the essence of life. So she gets angry again and she exits only to scream from off stage, run back on stage and out the other side, obviously fleeing from something. So Don Giovanni makes Leperello go see what's going on. Of course, Leperello's not very crazy about this idea because he, you know, he's more superstitious maybe than Don Giovanni. But anyway, so he actually eventually goes out to investigate, but also screams, runs back into the room and dives under the table to hide. So then arrives the statue. And this is done in a very sort of, you know, big theatrical way. He doesn't just walk on stage. The lights usually will go out and there'll be like some sort of flames, you know, affecting, you know, some kind of effect that sort of masks him coming on so that he just kind of appears, right? And Don Giovanni, after he kind of gets over his shock, recovers himself and orders Leperello to set another place at the table. But of course, he can't get him out from under the table. And anyway, the statue refuses the food, saying that he only takes nourishment from heaven now. So he, you know, so Don Giovanni basically says, well, you know, what do you want? And you know, the Commendatore, that's the statue of the Commendatore, asks for Don Giovanni to give him his hand. And when he does, Don Giovanni feels his blood running cold, and the Commendatore, the statue, demands that Don Giovanni repent and change his ways. But Don Giovanni says, oh no, I'm not, this is not happening. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to be afraid. I will never act out of fear, and I will not give in to this this force that is asking me to be oppressed by this sort of morality, heavenly morality. And so then in a great flash, the earth opens up and Don Giovanni is dragged down to hell. So actually, I was going to read a little bit of the text, but I don't think I really need to. Rick, if you are ready, let's go ahead and just play this fantastic scene of the stone guest arriving for dinner.
A torto di vitate, a
Wow, you really heard the descent there. He's
Yeah.
going down. He's going down. I was struck in there by the layers of voices. So there was several singers doing different things, and it's so obvious, but I'll just say it because it just occurred to me so strikingly that opera singers must also, to a certain extent, be actors too, and it's a truth that I just hadn't really considered before.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people complain about the acting in opera because it's not realistic at all, right? Most of the time, because it's a huge theater, and so it's hard to sort of, you know, we're used to filmic acting now, right? Where everybody's the microphone is right up close to the mouth so people can whisper, you know, or they're changing like basically you know, there's a change in their expression that maybe no more than an arched eyebrow or you know, a slight turn of the head. So on a big stage it has to be big. That combined with, of course, the athletic demands on your body with an opera, as an opera singer, there's a great deal of strength that's required, breath control, and, you know, I mean, you're wearing layers of clothes, like costumes, wigs, and it's a long night, and it takes a lot of energy. And so it is absolutely an acting, there is acting required, but I mean, you know, in these big theaters, when you're singing over an orchestra, the other element is that you pretty much have to face out to the audience all the time, which doesn't make it easy to make it look sort of natural and realistic. So it's required, but for most opera singers, it's not the most important thing. Or that is to say, for most opera audiences, it's not the most important thing. Now we have films, like they're being shown in cinemas and things like that. And so I think a lot of opera singers are spending a bit more time thinking about that, they're trying to make it just a little bit more intimate and involving their faces a little bit in a little bit more intimate way.
I'm sure you have some concluding remarks, but there's one question that I want to ask because I'll probably forget. It came to my attention from an audio describer in the last few months that opera singers have a particular posture when they sing. It's something about a rigid posture that I can't remember the details, but there was some content that when I don't know if this applies to dramatic operas when there's acting too, but there's a posture associated with operatic singing. Is that right?
Not exactly. I mean, there's total freedom in the body, but there should be, right?
Okay.
I think that maybe what you might be thinking of is in certain periods, like Baroque opera, which is early opera. They're sort of a performance practice, perhaps, so that there are very definite gestures and dances and things like that that are associated with Baroque opera. But sort of after that time, and even now when they're performed, unless it's like some group that's particularly concerned with performance practice, they'll just do it whatever way. So no, I mean, I think you do have to acknowledge that standing up straight makes it easier to breathe. And so I think posture is important for singing, quality of singing, but it isn't a prescribed thing at all. No, it's complete freedom of movement.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that what we just heard was the way that the opera ended for most of the 19th century. This very sort of scary minor, he gets his comeuppance when he goes to hell. But in fact, Mozart wrote another scene after this. It's just very sort of bright and major in key, which is the moral of the story. And now everybody's happy. So Donna Anna and Ottavio come back on stage, and Zerlina and Mazzetto and Elvira, and it's like, it just goes to show you ought to do the right thing, and don't try to get away with sinning against God and nature and your fellow human beings, and then just goes to say they each take a turn at saying what they're, now it's time for us to get married, and now I'll go. I think Elvira decides she's going to check into a convent. She probably doesn't have too many other options, to be honest. So that's the way that it was originally written, but then dropped through the 19th century. And there are a lot of reasons that we could actually talk about for that, but then picked up again in the 20th century as a conclusion for the opera.
In fact, was it Wikipedia that I was reading? It said, and then even more close to the present, it's being dropped again. And so what's up with the changing views about that last piece?
Yeah, so through the 19th century, there was a real need to shake off, say, the religion and the church, and bring the focus back to the individual and freedom of choice and all these kinds of things, right? So I think that's probably why it was done. And there's a lot of writing through the 19th century about the Superman, right? The Übermensch in German, like it's this kind of like, I will do what I want to all the time, and that was seen as a good thing, right? As being freed of these kinds of shackles of a morality from an age gone by, which was associated with a power structure, right? So that power structure being the aristocracy and the church and all the rest of it, right? So of course, the 19th century was all about shaking that off. In the 20th century, I think people decided, well, maybe we ought to just kind of take this down a notch. And, look, Mozart wrote this really cool thing, which goes, to underlining the point that we do have a duty to our fellow human beings, to treat them as individuals, not just as things, and that, we're connected. There's a certain amount of interdependency, obviously. But I do think that more recently people are just playing around with, oh, well, what if we do this? And let's drop it, let's try something new again. So there's all kinds of takes that you can have on any of these really old works that like Shakespeare and things like that. Everybody's got their idea about how they're going to do the production.
I wonder about, and it's not a question because I don't, expect you to have researched this or know about it, but maybe you do. But I wonder if anyone's done going back to something I brought up earlier, done a feminist revisionist kind of take on this, because I'm thinking about how Don Giovanni may have been a bit of a, you used the phrase hero, but anti-hero, but in a hero to some in those terms that you outlined, of being a rebel who's ready to throw away old constraints that are not useful. And that's a great idea, and enlightenment of separating church and state and morality, and those are really important to re-examine. But as so often happens in culture, women's bodies end up where those struggles are played out. And so I just wonder what women have done with this story, women who are thinking about gender politics, and how it's so often the case that lovely ideas and theoretical concepts get played out in graphic ways in terms of women. Is that something you've ever come across in scholarship about the opera?
I have to say that I have not researched that side of it, but I have no doubt that there is lots of scholarship on that subject, and many productions that highlight those themes. And the idea again, and even in this production, when Maria talks about, let's treat each other as individuals and not
the
labels.
casting too, that was so intriguing. That was one of the many things in that interview that I wanted to reference back, is the casting of a transgendered actor to play the lead. And it made me think about, in a way I wouldn't have thought of, is how does a seducer work? How does that process unfold? Is it because a male seducer has enough feminine side to intuit what's going to work with women? And that was a creepy and bizarre idea. But the casting in this production is really intriguing, and I wonder how that will play out in the way that the character is enacted.
Well, as I said, I think, or I mean, as Maria pointed out, I mean, the Lucia is playing a male character, right? So I don't think Lucia is bringing her gender explicitly to her performance, but undoubtedly, is informing her characterization. And I think, again, at the root of all of it is this idea of, we're not men and women, we're people, right? We're individuals. And so if Don Giovanni understands women, it could be that he's just actually in that moment, for his own nefarious purposes, treating them as human beings. You know what I mean? Like paying attention to them, and even if it's just for a short time, is getting inside their heads and seeing the world from their point of view, which is a very attractive quality.
Creepy,
very creepy,
very creepy.
But it's not creepy until you know that you're just another notch on the belt, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we definitely, it's time for questions and comments and input. And so if you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand if you want to contribute. And Sarah will, or actually Julia, either one can point you out. I'm going to start with a question of my own, which comes from Julia, a discussion you had with Amy. Maybe I think it was in the context of La Boheme, and it was about microphones versus not. And the crux of that discussion that I took away was, originally, before we had microphones and amplification, theaters were smaller and different, particular things were expected of a singer. And so there's so many directions I want to take that question, but the first one is, you referenced this particular theater in this upcoming performance as being smaller and reminiscent of the European contexts where this production would have been originally staged. And so what do you expect from this theater in terms of acoustics and how the singers will interact with the space?
Well, it is a proscenium theater. So there is the proscenium arch, meaning there will be a curtain that opens and closes, and that's just a classical theater opera house, right? I think that singers very much like smaller houses because it means they don't have to work so hard or be as concerned about things like projecting and always making sure they're facing out over the orchestra, and it's just vocally more friendly to have a smaller house, and the audiences will definitely appreciate that too, because it's a more intimate experience. They'll be able to see things more closely. They'll be able to hear the music in a different way. A Mozart opera has a smaller orchestra because just it's funny. It's almost like in terms of sound, we've gone from quiet to just louder all through history, right up until we've gotten to amplification and electric guitars and speakers that are the size of buildings. It's like, so with Mozart being earlier, there's it was written to be quieter, and
that's
so
interesting.
Yeah, and understanding that the orchestra is smaller and it's quieter, and it allows the voice to be able to sing in a light enough way that it can move around, and we didn't play a lot of the arias that have lots of notes, lots of runs and ups and downs and all that kinds of stuff, but they're there. And when you have to sing loud all the time, it's very difficult to sing in a flexible sort of florid way. So that's what this opera brings to us, is that style of singing, and this kind of theater makes that a lot more of a happy experience for performers and audiences.
So please raise your hand if you have a question or comment.
Yes, yeah. I noticed that actually Rita I think Rita is number 1 on the list here of people with questions. So Rita, if you want to go ahead and ask a question.
Okay. My question has to do with a comment that you made earlier about how all the villains have the baritone voices and the heroes have the tenor voices.
Generally.
And is this, I was going to say, is this a common thing in opera? Because I actually happen to like the baritone voices better than the tenor voices. So, but it's my own personal preference, but I really like baritones a lot more.
Well, it's interesting because they have, oftentimes I think the higher voices are associated with younger characters too. It goes back to that commedia dell'arte thing, right? With the sort of archetypes and stuff like that. And so oftentimes opera is about love. And so you have young love in opera, right? And so that's, I think, why you oftentimes have the heroes being tenors and the heroines being sopranos. But the more interesting characters, I agree, tend to be more complex and maybe play against type that way. And I also love the baritone voice and the mezzo's like contralto voice in women too.
Yeah, me too. Same thing. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks,
Rita.
Rita.
Rita, have you been to a performance of Don Giovanni?
I was, but the ironic thing is it's the first opera I ever saw, and I was 6.
Oh wow! Oh
so,
my gosh!
And my mom's friends thought she was crazy to take me to it, but and I was a little bit scared when Don Giovanni got dragged off by the
Understandable.
by the Commendatore. I mean, that was that was a little bit scary, but she said, okay, it's okay, and but yeah, so yeah, but actually, that's the only one. The only instance of Don Giovanni I saw was when I was 6.
Oh, was that when were you seeing that in Turkish? Like you've seen some
No,
other operas?
that one actually was interesting. We went to Germany because my mom wanted to consult an eye doctor for me. And so we were, I think it was in Bonn or something. I think that's where the hospital was that we stayed at, the clinic. But I don't remember if the opera house was actually in the same city or in a different city. But I know we went to it, when we were in Germany.
And it probably would have been in one of those nice smaller opera houses too.
It was definitely a smaller opera house. Yeah.
They have a lot more of those in Europe.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thanks, Rita.
All right.
We have a question from Myra.
Oh, I just want to say I just absolutely love the whole evening. It was amazing. I love the voices, and I learned so much because I've sort of always been familiar with the music of Don Giovanni, but never really knew the plot line or never thought I ever would be able to because it's not in English. But I have 2 quick questions. One is the final part piece that Mozart has written. Will it be performed in the Victoria production?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. And the other thing is, and it's a staging thing, I think you said that at the end, the Don Giovanni is dragged down to hell. That, I don't know, the floor opens or something and he goes down. But how do they do that on the stage?
Well, good question.
Yeah. Oftentimes these stages will have trap doors, right? So it will actually open up and they'll go down. So of course, with opera, the orchestra is in the pit, the orchestra pit, which is partly under the stage and partly just sort of jutting out from under the stage. So that's it's placed there to kind of stay out of the way, but also to keep a little bit on the sound. They also, can find ways, I believe, to move people down through, I'm not sure if they're going through the opera or through the orchestra pit, or if they're just kind of going behind it somehow. But they do find ways. And of course, it's always interesting to see what they do and how they do it. Historically, I think some of the best stagecraft that way actually happened in Mozart's time, and through the 19th century, the stagecraft was quite amazing. But I don't know what they'll do with this one, but I'm sure it'll be inventive, and that's kind of the most interesting part of it.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering if they would he'd just get him under the tablecloth or something.
Yeah. Well, that's, Leperello is my favorite character in the whole thing. Like he's like very funny.
Great evening. I'm going to mute myself now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Myra. And I think next on our list is Misty. Would you like to ask a question, Misty?
Okay, there we go. Actually more of, I guess, commentary, if you will, on this. Okay, so the scene with the Commendatore, first few bars, so memorable. I'll say they're memorable because the first time I was exposed to Don Giovanni was from watching the movie version of Schaeffer's Amadeus.
Right.
And the clicked. It brought back so many memories from watching that for the first time. And so yeah, it was just and another thing I guess I will say is, speaking of this being in Italian, I do have about a B1 level of Italian myself. I'm self-taught, and so I was listening a lot more closely to the lyrics, and it's interesting. I don't know how much background you have in the language aspects of this. I know a lot of singers will simply do the phonetic, transcription and all that. But it's funny and fascinating how with the Italian, a lot of it's different. They drop a lot of the final vowels. For instance, andiamo instead of andiamo. For instance, and like the R infinitive drops the E. It's a little bit jarring to get used to, as you're learning it in a spoken way. But it's fascinating to be able to hear sort of and to be able to understand a bit more of it because of my Italian background.
Yeah,
practice that way.
I'm glad that there's somebody out there that's potentially getting more than what I can provide. I mean, I don't speak Italian, although I've studied it a lot and sang it a lot, right? Okay. But you're right, they do kind of, like, composers will mess around with the text to just make it fit the tune or something like that. Right.
I wonder if there were any, I probably might not know about this, but I was just wondering, if there were any conventions, like rules as far as opera, as far as Italian singing in an operatic context like that. But like, for instance, the dropping of the vowels, because sometimes they include them, it seems, sometimes they don't, like with the infinitives especially.
I think it's mostly to do with how it sings, right? Like, and the composer
sort of the
makes
meter.
that choices. Yeah, and sometimes you'll find people like Pavarotti or something like that, right? Or some really authentically Italian singers doing things like adding in a little extra between consonants, andiamo, like that kind of thing. So that
maybe that's interesting.
And it is because technically it helps them maintain a kind of a through line with their singing, with their voice.
That's that's not, I wouldn't have expected it in the middle of a word like that. I might have expected like adding the E to the infinitive where it's dropped in the program.
Purely a technical thing for singing.
And speaking of just the whole plot line of the play, sort of this more quote unquote lighthearted thing, it's certainly probably for its time it would have been considered that by many. You look at Mozart himself. I mean, Amadeus was to some degree accurate as far as his personality. I mean, it was very, frankly, raunchy and very, very uncouth in a lot of ways, even from the historical record, as I understand it. And that certainly comes into the play as well. And that laugh in the play, oh my goodness, apparently it was based on some historical fact as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that it's funny because throughout history, of course, the historians go through their phases and their trends and stuff like that. And, there was a real phase there where Mozart was like sort of the natural godchild of just absorbing music from the world, from the atmosphere. And it was just kind of almost a supernatural force himself, right? Of not being an intellectual, really, just being somebody that this beautiful music just kind of poured out of him. And I mean, really, he was a little bit of a like special that way. Like he'd go to a concert and hear something one time and go home and write it all out. And we're not talking about like one line, like a violin line. It'd be a whole orchestra and he could just write it all down. So that's special, right?
Indeed.
Well,
I'm just gonna add because I have to. Sea shanties do that too. They'll add extra syllables to a word just for the flow. Thank you. I love sea shanties. Yeah, and so I think it's maybe a convention of singers that you'll just add an extra syllable just because it makes it flow better.
Yeah. And one thing, again, not to harp on Amadeus, but I really love the movie. One thing, like certainly the Symphony in November 25, it was actually the first few bars of that was my ringtone for a long time. But one thing though that so I fell in love with was it a horn sonata? I can't remember the exact the whole like the K numbers and all that. But anyway, this horn sonata at the beginning of it, where Salieri is describing it so beautifully, and just like he's like, even though he in the play anyway, in the movie, he despises Mozart with a passion, he just is absorbed in that particular piece and like describes it and analyzes it in such a lovely way. And like I'd never listened to that horn sonata like that before. and I was like, this, I mean, it made me fall in love with not only that, but also other aspects of Mozart's composition. So
yeah, maybe we should see if we can find a link to add into the notes to Amadeus.
Oh my gosh.
Like that we send out just to reference for people who haven't seen the movie.
Right.
You know, that horn sonata. But well, thanks.
I've seen that movie too, and it was many years ago, and it didn't make a big impression on me. But the one thing that I never forgot, and it's because it's what happens in my own head. People would be talking to Mozart, and the soundtrack of the film, they would just lower the voices, and he'd just be hearing music in his head, and he wouldn't even be registering the conversation of people around him because there was music in his head all the time. And I guess that stuck with me so strongly because it's not like I zone out from people, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'd feel like I have, unless I'm really focused on something, there's a song in my head all the time. And
with the earworms.
The earworm, I'm huge. I have a colony of earworms always.
Oh,
colony, nice.
Great.
For the verma, there's a name for it. I'm a vermicular or something, and there's always an earworm in my
guys. We have a couple of other hands here.
Sure.
Shall we go ahead and
please
ask Megan to unmute herself and ask her question, and then we have Judy after that.
Great.
Megan is taking a moment.
There
she is.
There you go.
Hi, Megan.
Sorry, I couldn't finish what I was listening to the Almost opera, but it sounded to me like it sounded really good. I was wondering, could you send me a recording of that? Because I didn't really couldn't really finish because I had to go out with my caregiver.
The opera is really common. If you go to YouTube, you'll easily find any part of that opera, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Was it the opera that you wanted, or was it this presentation that you wanted?
This presentation, yeah.
Oh, these show up on YouTube as well. And so if you go to YouTube and look for the VocalEye channel, all of these presentations are recorded and they turn up on the VocalEye YouTube channel. So yes, you have access to it at a future time.
I just say YouTube VocalEye channel, is that right?
You go to the YouTube site, like youtube.com, and then go to the search bar and type in VocalEye channel, and you'll probably come up with the result. And I'm sure it's in any of the emails too. It's probably in there as well. So there'll probably be some lag time, so it's not like you could go right after this meeting and find it, but they do get posted, so it will be available.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Megan. Thank you. Okay. Judy, you're next.
Okay, am I on?
There you are.
Okay, perfect. Opera has to be the ultimate entertainment, right? It's theater, it's voice, it's symphony, the whole enchilada. So you gotta love it, and I don't know why more people don't. But anyway, my question is, the theater component, like I know how hard you folks work on every fraction of every note, but what happens with the libretto? At some point, does the whole company do like a theater performance where you figure out who's going to walk where, who's going to gesture? Like how much time do you spend on the theatrical component? Is that like 10%? Is it 40%? Is it an afterthought?
Yeah, so it's quite different to a regular sort of stage play. So sorry, can you guys hear me all right? Because my computer's doing funny things. Okay, and I don't know why, but the Cortana or whatever keeps opening up. I'm talking and I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying.
It has a mind of its own. That's
yeah. So anyway, so the theater, most plays, the actors will show up and they don't really know the play yet. Like they haven't got it memorized. They memorize it as they work on it, because that allows the director a lot of freedom to help them with their interpretation. And Steph, Steph Kirkland has a background in theater, and she could probably talk more about this than I can. But in opera, everybody has to show up with their parts learned musically, not just learned, but memorized, coached, finessed. Like basically, it's in the box. And then there is a process, and it depends on which opera company you're working with, depending on their budget, about how long that rehearsal process takes. If you're in a place like Victoria or Vancouver, where they're doing one opera at a time, then it's around a month. So the people fly in from all over the place, and they start rehearsing, and they will start right away, probably with just music rehearsals with the conductor, and then they'll go into staging it. And it's just like anything else, they have to figure out where they're going to be, and when they pick up the glass and throw it in the fireplace, or jump on a chair or whatever. And then that's always done in like a rehearsal space, because you can't rehearse in a theater in opera, because the theater costs too much money. Like the Queen Elizabeth Theater here in Vancouver is a very expensive place to be. So after you've fully staged and rehearsed the opera, then you move into the theater for what they call tech week, which is basically when the crew puts up all the set, and people get a chance to walk around on the real space, on the real set pieces. When you're in the rehearsal space, the floor is all taped out, so that it's like, okay, this yellow box on the floor is actually a table, right? So you're doing a lot of make-believe or whatever. And then when you're in the theater, it's full on, like first night's probably with piano, but from then on it's with the orchestra, which is again very expensive. And that's a recurring theme with opera. It's very, very expensive. So there is a whole rehearsal process. And but if you're in a place like the Met, which is a repertory theater, or like where they have several productions going on at one time, then you may have like one night a production of Don Giovanni featuring a certain cast with certain singers, but then 2 nights later they'll play Don Giovanni again, but it'll be completely different cast, because they've all rehearsed, and they just kind of fly around doing it in different places. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I've done this Don Giovanni before. And then they maybe get a day to walk through it and rehearse it, and then they're on.
Oh my gosh.
It depends.
So if you are a performer, I'm kind of going back to Judy's curiosity also, which I share, which is, of all of the time that you put into knowing how to sing the piece and how to perform the piece, what proportion of that is actual stage direction and dramaturgy, moving on the stage, versus the musicality?
Well, it probably depends on who you are and how much you're getting paid. Because after all, right, being an opera singer can be almost an expensive hobby. Like where you're paying people to help you rehearse something, to learn, to show up, to do your part. But then, it's like, okay, well, I got paid, yes, but I probably spent half of that money in preparations for this role, at least the first time you do it, right? After that, not so much. It's sort of like teachers when they prepare lesson plans. The first year they're teaching, they're spending a lot of time and they're getting paid pennies on the hour. But after that, they so it's sort of the same thing. And now if you're Kiri Takanawa, a very world famous opera singer of generation ago or whatever, she said she used to take a year to learn a role because she wanted it to be perfect, right? But then she got the fees when she performed as well. So
yeah,
different.
So performers are primarily singers, not actors, going back to my earlier curiosity.
Well, it's most opera singers are actors in opera as well, but then they may also do concert work where they're not acting, they're just singing.
Okay. Are there other raised hands?
Thank you very much. I was curious.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
On your character, that you had to be in character to sing as well as you possibly could. Like you had to really put yourself into the role of Carmen or whoever, like to really sing.
And different performers care about that more than others. So, you know, and I think it's also, as I said, with the new sort of emphasis, because some of these operas are now being broadcast through to cinemas, so that it's actually like watching a movie and you're up close, then acting becomes a lot more important, right? And once upon a time in you know, if it was just a theater in the sort of late 1800s or whatever, then they didn't care. And then you have, all that matters is the singing, right? And then that's especially when you have like the character of Mimi, who's supposed to be 18 and dying of consumption and starvation, ends up being a, you know, very large woman who's obviously 45 or 50, right? So it's like the priorities there for the audience are different, right? And they're different now. People are more, they're not gonna kind of go to the opera to see that really as much as they used to.
Fascinating. We probably have time for one or two more questions. Are there more raised hands?
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Oh,
yeah, thank you. I don't actually see any more raised hands, so maybe everybody's had enough.
Well, I'll ask one concluding question, or it's again, it may not be a field that you don't know about specifically, but it's something I think about a lot, and it's about who was listening to this opera, who got to hear it when it first was written and performed. And this is something that you referenced in a conversation with Amy too, and it's something I often think about, that we associate opera with very erudite, very sophisticated, expensive entertainment for a certain type of person. And I think all the time about what was the world like before recorded music. So, you know, before 130 years or so ago, people's attitude toward music and exposure to it would have been completely different. And my understanding is that classical music, and possibly even opera, was truly the pop music of the day. And the little bits I know suggest that efforts were made for music of the day to be accessible to the public, so that you would have sometimes public performances or cheaper performances. And that comforts me, because I can't imagine a world without music on demand. And so if I imagine a world where I could only hear music if I happen to be near a musician, it comforts me to think that music was available more.
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, when it comes to opera, of course, yes, you're right. There were different levels, different theaters playing to different audiences, just like there's now. But also those tunes became things people sang on the street, right? So, right, you know, Rigoletto, that La Donna è mobile, dum, dum, bum, ba-da-dum, right? So the composer Verdi, he actually would not let the tenor who was supposed to sing that role have that aria until like a day or two before it opened, because he knew the guy would go around singing it, and then it would be out on the streets before the show even opened. So it became it was just played by the like accordion, or the, you know, the sort of organ grinder type, you know, like guitar,
a busker,
like they'd be playing it on the street. The second thing is, of course, that before recorded music, more people played instruments, especially with the rise of the middle class, and people could afford to have an instrument like a piano or a violin or whatever. And that was their entertainment. It was like, even my grandparents' generation, after dinner, they sat around and they played stuff on the piano. You know, they didn't watch TV. They were singing and playing.
So you think more people were musical, or more people learned music?
Music was part of the basic education
today.
More so.
I have goosebumps. I'm so glad I raised that, because I had not considered that as part of my sense of the past.
Middle class, right? Middle class.
Of course.
If you're still in the lower classes, then you may not be able to afford.
Well, there's still things like little flutes and voice. too. There's cheaper ways too as well.
Sure.
Oh, so interesting. I'm noting the time, and I think it's time for our prize draw. Very exciting. Can I invite?
I just Judy had her hand up. Judy, is there time for just one more question?
Yes,
for
of
Judy?
course.
Yeah,
of course.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice the hand, and I just want to make sure we weren't ignoring her.
Was it Judy who asked a question before? Maybe her hand didn't get lowered.
I don't know. I thought
Is that possible?
Judy, are
Judy
you?
was the last person to ask a question, so that may have been
Yeah. Okay.
Judy's. We're good. I think we're good. Okay, I'm not hearing Judy.
Okay.
So
I think
I assume her question was answered.
I unmuted.
There you are.
We can hear you
now.
Yeah, I did unmute. No, I did lower my hand. On my machine, I'm showing a lowered hand.
Okay. Did you have another question?
No, but it means you have to push that button to lower your hand, I think.
Oh, that could be. No, Julie totally answered my question.
Okay.
And thank you for that.
Great.
Yay.
Okay. So then I think we can move on to the
prize
event.
draw.
Yeah. Yoo-hoo.
I'm going to invite Sarah into the space to facilitate this exciting moment. And I believe the method is to choose. Is the method to choose a word, Sarah? Is that how this works?
Yeah, so you can choose any word. Usually our guests choose a word that was used quite a bit during the show, but it's up to you. And just anytime you're ready, we'll pull a name.
All right,
So
Julia.
is that me or is that you, Christine?
That's you.
Okay.
Pressure's on.
Okay, then let's do. I'll do. Do I have to tell you in advance, or do? You
can just shout it out whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Okay.
So are you doing your thing?
Yep. So anytime you're ready.
Okay, here we go. Commendatore.
Okay, so we landed on, let me just see if this person is still in. Yes, so it's actually Judy LaRouche. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right. Yeah, and Judy's still with us. So congratulations.
Judy.
Congrats, Judy.
Awesome. So someone from the VocalEye team will be in touch with you, Judy, to make sure that the prize makes sense for where you are. And big fat congratulations to you. Awesome.
Yeah.
I want to win a prize sometime. I'm going to come on a night when I'm not hosting or guesting, just so I can win a prize.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know if I'm unmuted or not. I've kind of lost
you are.
one.
No, we're hearing you.
Wonderful. Yeah,
big celebration.
I don't know. I once again baffled by technology. I don't know what I'm looking at now. I can't read it. But thank you very much for a wonderful evening, and thank you for giving me a prize. That doesn't happen to me all that often. So
right? I'm giving you a double thumbs up to the camera right now.
It's your day, Judy.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, ladies.
And I'd like to thank Julia so much. I feel so much closer to opera than I ever have. And part of the reason, honestly, is the translation. All of the sudden, the story actually hooks up to the music for me in a way that it never had. And I'm sure I speak for all of our participants when I say thank you.
I'm so
Kermit
glad.
the Frog looking back.
That's great. You'll always get me with Kermit.
Really? Oh, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad that was very nice of you to say, because of course that's the goal, is to connect the story to the form and realize that there is a story there. It's just you have to work a little to get to it sometimes.
Indeed.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.